All right, what's up guys? We're back here today with a 2023 Honda Grom, and we are going to be doing the stretch kit from the Ruck Shop as well as from Man in the Box. We're going to do the 2.5-inch lowering kit. So we're going to jump right into this, make this really simple, try to give you a better updated version for these new bikes, and we'll just jump right into it. So first things, we need to take off this little plastic fairing here. There's 3 Allen heads. You got one here, one down here, and then you got one on this side right here. And then you can take this part off and that'll open up a little bit for us to work with. I'm gonna go ahead and take off this sprocket cover here just to make it a little bit easier on us for getting the new chain on. But you just have 2 8mm heads here. You can take those off and then that'll give you access to your sprocket cover there. So the next step here is you're gonna wanna find the master link here. It's probably best to put it on the sprocket, then maybe drop it in gear so that your wheel's not spinning, or have somebody hold it for you. And then you just need to use like a flathead and push this clip out. It'll push towards the front of the motor, and then you can take this clip off, and then you should be able to take the whole chain out. So once you have that little clip off, you can just take off this little head here. That just comes right off. At least it's supposed to. And then you can pop the chain off just like that. All right, so next what we gotta do is we gotta get the axle off. So on this side you have a 14mm, and on this side you have a 19mm. So in order to get those off, you gotta use 2 wrenches, 2 ratchets, whichever, and you can get the bolts off and you can slide the axle out. That way you can get the wheel off. So I forgot to mention to make sure you hold the caliper over here. Make sure that doesn't fall. You don't want any excess strain on the hoses or anything like that. My tensioners actually just came right out. I didn't even need to loosen any bolts or anything like that. You may have to loosen yours just to, I don't know exactly what size these are, but they are counter turned. But these, if they're like mine, it should just pop right out. So you shouldn't really have to worry about that. So now that I have this apart, I'm actually gonna go ahead and do the 2-inch or 2.5-inch lowering kit, since I'm right here and it's open and I have a lot more space to work with in here. So I'm gonna jump into that too. If you don't wanna do the lowering kit or anything, I'll leave a timestamp right after this for continuing on with the stretch kit. So for loosening the lower shock, you're either gonna want to make sure you have some weight taken off somewhere. I've got these stands under here as well as the stand underneath, but you have a 16mm bolt here and a 14mm bolt here. Take those 2 off, get the spring loose, and then we're gonna work on getting in the new bracket. So with the man in the box kit here, this is the version 3, you'll have it, it's gonna go like this. This is gonna be where the shock is currently, but you're gonna move the shock out the way. There's gonna be a spacer in the middle of here, and then you will have a washer and then another bolt, and then of course the last piece. And then you're gonna have the same thing with a bolt here with the spacer, and the shock is gonna go on this top one right here. So we'll get that going, and then I'll show you when it's all completed, but we'll get that started. So once you have this on here, as you can kind of see now, you got a spacer here on this one. There's a spacer on where the shock used to be over here. And then you have the shock obviously on this back piece here. So that's how it looks. You can have a large Allen key here. This is a 16 millimeter. So we'll go ahead and get that tightened down, and then it'll be all completed. So now that that's all tightened up and everything, this is how your man in the box 2.5 inch lowering kit should look. So now that that's done, we can move on back down to the stretch kit here. So with this stretch kit here, it's kind of hard to mess this part up. So obviously the Allen key is going to be the upper side, and then the notches have to face out. So this here is going to go on the left side of the bike. And for this one, you need to have, if you got the Ruck Shop stretch kit here, you have to use the shorter bolt, and you have a washer and a nut. And I'll show you when it goes in, but this piece here will set in this little, has a little groove, sits in there like that. And that way you can get your bolt in there, and you can have it on the longest setting you want. So for getting this swing arm extension in here, I sprayed it with WD-40. Apparently on the 23 models, it is very difficult to beat in there. I used rubber mallet, and you have to get it just far enough in so that the first hole is exposed, and then that way you can put on this bracket, and then you can put the bolt through and then tighten it with the washer. So that's the first part. I had to smack it really hard, but that's probably what you're gonna have to do with the 23 model. I'm gonna go ahead and get this other side in, and then we will work on extending the brake here. So when you get this on the right side on, remember there's no washer on this. You have this little bracket here that goes on facing the rear end. And so at this point, now we have to loosen up this little connection here. It's a 12 millimeter. We're just gonna break it loose a little bit. Don't take it off, just loosen it. And then you can stretch this cable, and then you can get it onto here and then lined up with your hole there for the axle. So that's the next step here. Too much. So once you get your brake line extended and you have this bracket here, you can kind of see how it lines up. This just kind of sits in the bracket there. But you can loosen up these Allen keys here and then that'll give you access to kind of spin these so you can get your axle in. So the next step here, we're gonna get the axle in, and we're gonna work on tightening it down and everything. You may wanna make sure you have your calipers here spread out, so that way it slides in there a little bit better. It shouldn't be too bad because you didn't take that off. You may have a little bit of air in the system, so when you do get it back on, make sure you kind of hit your brakes a couple times so they're not spongy. But we're gonna go ahead and get the axle back on. And remember that you have these two little brackets on each side. Make sure you have your 19 millimeter on one side, your 14 on the other, the 19 on the larger side with the caliper. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that back on, and then we'll go from there. So now that you've got the axle on, this may take two people or some persuasion, either way. But obviously I don't have it tight yet. But you're gonna want to make sure that this little bracket piece here is on the inside, facing out on both sides. That's just one thing you wanna make sure you have. You wanna make sure you have this little spacer in here that goes around the wheel nut. You wanna make sure that's there. And then over here, caliper, you gotta get that attached. And then obviously you have your bolt on each side. So you wanna make sure that all of those pieces are in there, so that way your wheel doesn't end up shifting side to side and then you have problems. So now at this point, before you tighten everything up, you wanna make sure that your axles are lined up the same. I think I'm actually gonna go ahead and put the chain on first so that I know where it is and how much slack I'll need, and then I'll work on tightening the axle. But the ruck shop, they give you a chain and they tell you have to take out three links. We'll see. I'm gonna go ahead and get that link all set up, and then we can check to see what needs to get taken out, and then we can tighten up the axle so that way we don't have a lot of slack inside of your chain. So I kind of have this mocked up right now so you can see. I just need to take out those 3 links right there, and then you'll be good. And then that's the point where you will start tightening up your axle to make sure that this is tight and then you don't have so much slack in here. So they give you a chain breaking tool, and I'll use that to take out the 3rd link, and then we'll go ahead and put the master link back in, and then we'll start working on getting it tight. So I took out the 3 links. I got it, stretched out pretty good. There's still some good slack here. But remember, when you put on this spring clip here, make sure that it is facing away from you. Like, you got to push it to the rear of the bike in order to get that spring on. You don't want it facing you. So the next part of this is obviously just lining up your axle. You want to make sure that it's even, so whichever notch you're on here, you can take this tool that they provide you and you can spin it backwards or forward, whichever one you want, and then you tighten it with this bolt here, and then after that it's just tightening down your axle. So this part is all dependent on how you have yours set up, and you want to make sure that your chain doesn't have a bunch of slack. I mean, obviously, like right now, that's a little bit too much. So I'm going to be adjusting mine, and then we'll have it set, and then pretty much have to put the fairing back on, and that's it. So once you have your slack all adjusted, you have your axle tight, the last thing that you can do, totally optional though, is you can put that rear splash fairing back on with those 3 bolts. That's totally optional. I think I'm going to throw mine on there, but if you don't, it doesn't matter. It just gives you more room to mess with things in here. But once that's done, that's everything. So I did forget to mention though that if you did add the 2.5-inch lowering spring, you cannot put the fairing back on there, or that small splash guard. It will not fit because the spring is now further over. Unless you cut it, you can make it work. But in the end, this is the final product. This is the 6-inch stretch kit from the ruck shop with the man-in-the-box lowering kit. So in all, relatively easy, sometimes not. The 2023 models seem to have a little bit more of a struggle getting the extension kits in, but that's about it. But hopefully this helps you guys, and hopefully we'll be able to get more people with some stretch kits out here and having an easier time. But thanks for watching and enjoy.